Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Russian President Vladimir Putin agrees in principle to a US proposed 30-day Ukraine ceasefire, but insists on addressing underlying issues to ensure lasting peace. His demands include no NATO membership for Kiev, no foreign troops in Ukraine, and recognition of Russia's claim to Crimea and 4 other provinces. Hamas says it is ready to release an Israeli-American hostage and the remains of 4 other dual nationals. The group did not immediately specify when the release would take place. China urges an end to illegal sanctions on Iran as it hosted Iranian and Russian diplomats on Friday for talks. Beijing hopes it will restart long-stalled negotiations on Tehran's nuclear program. NASA and SpaceX are finalising Crew 10 launch plans to return stranded astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore. This mission seeks to safely bring them home after an extended orbital stay. Burundian soldiers have been killed in confrontations with the M23 rebel group in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The clashes resulted in significant casualties. Former Philippine President Felipe Duterte is scheduled for his initial appearance at the International Criminal Court on Friday. He faces charges related to his war on drugs and faces charges of crimes against humanity. Protests have erupted in Bangladesh after the death of an 8-year-old girl who suffered sexual violence. Thousands gather in the city of Magra for justice for the child. According to the UN, the war in Sudan has created the world's largest humanitarian crisis, blocking aid and laying siege to towns. The United Nations warns that nearly 2/3 of the population, over 30 million people, will require assistance this year. We have some breaking news now coming in from Germany. 4 Tesla cars have been set on fire in Berlin. Police said a member of the public had reported the first burning Tesla in the early hours of the morning in the eastern district of Planterwald. Around half an hour later, a passerby saw another Tesla in flames in the western district of Steglitz. Several other cars next to the Teslas were also damaged. In recent months, there have been several other incidents in targeting Teslas in Germany. We now move on. Russia and China have backed Iran after the United States called for nuclear talks with Tehran. Senior Chinese and Russian diplomats insisted that dialogue should only resume based on mutual respect and all sanctions against Iran must be lifted. In a joint statement issued after talks with Iran in Beijing, China and Russia welcomed Iran's commitment that its nuclear program is exclusively for peaceful purposes. They said Tehran's right to peaceful nuclear energy should be fully respected. Back in 2015, Iran agreed to curb its nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of international sanctions. That deal included the US, Russia, China, Britain, France and Germany. But in 2018, then US President Donald Trump pulled out of the pact. After the recent meeting, China's Vice Foreign Minister Ma Jiangsu said the parties involved should address the root cause of the current tensions. He then urged them to abandon sanctions, pressure and any threats of force. China, Russia and Iran also called for an end to all unilateral sanctions. Ma's meeting with Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov and Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister came just days after Tehran rejected US demands to resume nuclear talks. Recently, Donald Trump said he had sent a letter to Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei proposing talks. Trump warned that Iran had 2 choices, military confrontation or making a deal, but Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian made it clear he would not negotiate under threats. He said Iran would not bow to US demands. Tensions escalated when further 6 members of the United Nations Security Council, including the US, France, Greece, Panama, South Korea and Britain, held a closed-door meeting on Iran's nuclear program. Tehran accused them of misusing the Security Council's platform. China also criticized the meeting, with Foreign Minister Wang Yi saying it undermined trust. Iran has consistently denied working on nuclear weapons, but the International Atomic Energy Agency reported last month that Iran was rapidly enriching uranium to near weapons-grade levels. Let's hear what China's Vice Foreign Minister and Foreign Minister commented about Iran.
我们重点就核及解除制裁问题深入地交换了意见。我们强调终止所有非法单边制裁的必要性。
和平仍可争取，不能轻言放弃。单边制裁只会激化矛盾，对话谈判才是唯一的选择。
We are now joined by Dr. Sakuro Nagao, Fellow of the Hudson Institute, located in Tokyo, Japan. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Nagao. Dr. Nagao, what are the primary motivations for China, Iran and Russia to engage in these talks at this point in time specifically?
Recently, Russia, China, and Iran and North Korea, which so-called CRINC, enhance their cooperation very rapid pace. And in this case, if Iran possesses a nuclear weapon, this is not a threat against Russia or China. So this is acceptable. Instead of this, they can divert the target of the US nuclear weapon. So if Iran possesses a nuclear weapon, the US need to share some certain number of the nuclear weapon to deter the Iran's attack. So in this case, the same nuclear weapon will not aim to Beijing or Moscow. So that's why Iran's nuclear weapon is not a threat for China and Russia. But so that's why when they face strategy against the United States, this is one of the choice. But if Iran possesses a nuclear weapon, Iran is a Shia leader, so Shia Arab leader. So that's why the Sunni Arab leader need to possess a nuclear weapon to deter the attack from Iran. And Israel will publish the nuclear weapon, even if they possess a nuclear weapon secretly, but Israel hasn't published this as a formal stance. So that's why if Iran possesses a nuclear weapon, many other Middle Eastern countries, including Saudi Arabia and Israel, will publish their weapons. So that's why this will be the uncharted world in the Middle East. That's why Iran's possession of the nuclear weapon is changing point and the dangerous point of this security in the Middle East.
Dr. Nagao, how do these talks in Beijing fit into the broader geopolitical landscape, especially amid tensions between the West and both Russia and China?
I think how to deal with the United States is the most important target of this talk, I believe. Because currently Trump administration is sworn in, and his policy is very strong and very rapid. So when Trump administration decides something, it will affect, the impact is very big. So compared with the Biden administration, the world is changing very fast pace. Under such kind of situation, Russia, China, and North Korea, Iran try to coordinate each other to deal with United States. Maybe that kind of the situation they want to create. But at the same time, there is some gap of the interest in these 4 countries. So that's why how to coordinate is important. So that's why they want to meet and exchange opinion and coordinate their move. That is the situation, I believe.
I want to move on now to the role of the sanctions and economic interests. What do these sanctions, especially those imposed by the United States, play in shaping the agenda and possible outcomes of these talks and this relationship as a whole?
economic sanction to Iran is affected the economy of Iran. But about military strategy, about military equipment, indeed, this kind of economic sanction hasn't affected enough because Iran's military forces still has some certain budget. They improve their equipment step by step. And because of the Russia's invasion to Ukraine and Iran support, Iran export weapons to Russia, that's why Iran got enough income, enough equipment, enough parts to create new weapons. So that's why the economic sanction itself is affecting the people in Iran. But about military balance in this region, indeed, this is not enough to stop Iran to possess nuclear weapons or possess new weapons.
Dr. Nagao, what assurances or monitoring mechanisms would be necessary to keep Iran's nuclear activities in check?
Of course, the IAEA tried to check for a long time the international inspection has made, but at the same time, Iran hasn't published all of the facility in Iran. Once the country decides to do something secretly, it is nearly impossible to stop it indeed. Because in case of the North Korea, in case of the Iran, the country is wide, they can hide a big facility in many parts of their country. So that's why, of course, a big facility is, of course, the IAEA inspected or other country tried to inspect it under the regime of the United Nations. But still, there are some other secret facilities. So that's why it's very difficult to stop it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao. We now move on to more news. Taiwan's president has formally labelled China a foreign hostile force and ramped up national security measures in the face of growing threats and a string of spying cases. The new measures announced on Thursday include a controversial proposal to restore a military court system in Taiwan, which was under martial law until the late 1980s. He added that tougher measures are needed to counter Chinese efforts to weaken the island's defences, citing recent incidents that fall into a grey area of psychological warfare, short of armed conflict. Lai said that according to the government data, 64 people were charged for Chinese espionage last year, 3 times more than 2021. He said the majority were current or former military officials. The president proposed 17 legal and economic countermeasures, including a strict review of Taiwan's visits or residency applications by Chinese citizens, and proposals to resume the work of the military court. Here's what the Taiwanese president said.
消灭中华民国的野心没有一天改变过，不仅仅持续文攻武吓，对台湾社会的统战渗透 也愈来愈严重。从2005年，中国颁布所谓的反分裂国家法，把武力并吞台湾视为国家任务；到去年6月，发布所谓的惩毒22条，将所有不接受台湾是中华人民共和国一部分的所有人，都视为惩。
In response, the Chinese minister said,
首先啊，台湾是中国的一部分，没有什么总统。你提到的呢，也不是一个外交问题。我可以告诉你的是，不管民进党当局说什么，都改变不了台湾是中国一部分的事实，改变不了祖国必然统一的。
We are once again joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao to discuss this subject further. Dr. Nagao, we've seen the Chinese Chinese-Taiwan tensions rise every single day with planes and vessels approaching the island. Why has this incident specifically led the president to label China as a foreign and hostile force?
Because China believes making pressure to Taiwan change the public opinion in Taiwan, and these people accept China's sovereignty and try to stay peacefully with China under the Pax Chinese. But that's not happen, many people believe, because China is democratic and indeed actual independent country. So that's why even if the China say this is part of China, but real situation is Taiwan is out as an independent country. So that's why there is a gap between the perception between the Chinese government and the real actual situation. So that's why China is a little frustrated, and they try to making pressure very strongly, and Taiwan is resisting also because Taiwan's will is relatively strong.
Dr. Nagao, how do these statements and new security measures reflect Taiwan's broader strategy to handle this increasing pressure from Beijing?
Yes, because of the language, because of the business connectivity between China and Taiwan, there is a space China can infiltrate to the Taiwan society. So that's why there are the pro-China people in Taiwan, that's true. But, and some other spy, that's also true. So that's why how to deal with the spy is very important, maintain their independence. So Taiwan try to deal with it. But for a long time, because of the global free trade economy, Taiwan's business is very strongly connected with the Chinese mainland. So that's why now, because of the rising tension, Taiwan need to leave from the China's mainland. And so one by one, step by step, Taiwan government try to deal with situation which creates a gap, space, Chinese government agent infiltrated Taiwan. And at the same time, view from the Taiwanese government and Taiwanese people who believe they are independent, they want to decouple with China if possible. And this is a welcome move for view from Japan and the United States, I think.
What does reinstating the military court system imply for Taiwan's governance and civil-military relations?
Indeed, that is a little bit difficult to explain technically, but at the same time, indeed, there are some spy incidents in the military of Taiwan. That even if the relatively high level of the intelligence unit or high level of the armed commanding officers, we can find some spies. And Taiwan's government find spies in their organization. That is true. So spy of China in this case. So that's why there is no language barrier between two countries and relatively easy to infiltrate. That's true. So that's why how to find this kind of the agent of the China, or how to cut the relation between two is indeed very tough situation the Taiwan government need to deal with. So one by one they try to do it, and this is one of the steps, I think.
Dr. Nagao, how have neighbouring countries, especially those in Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific, responded to these escalation of tensions? And also, what kind of role might the close ally of Taiwan, the United States and other Western allies, play in light of Li's pointed rhetoric and China's forceful response?
Since the Trump administration swore in, the first beginning of the February, the United States sent the B-1 bomber to conduct a joint exercise with the Philippines. So that is a message, is the situation related to Taiwan. Because sending B-1 bomber is always a tool to send a political message in the Indo-Pacific region. For example, the North Korea developed nuclear weapon, and some things, the political statement needed, conducting joint exercises with Japan and South Korea with B-1 of the United States. So same thing has happened in the South China Sea with the Philippines and Japan in the sea around or air around Taiwan. That is sending message to China. Any places of the Chinese city can be the target by using the bombers. So, and Japan is well coordinated with U.S. Military forces to support Taiwan now. For example, the political statement, joint statement between the two leaders in February President Trump and Prime Minister Ishiba of Japan conclude this joint statement. This joint statement clearly mentions two governments support Taiwan to join the international organization. And so that is the first time two countries clearly support Taiwan's stance in the international stage. So that is a changing point. So, recently, U.S. State Department removed the sentence that U.S. will not support Taiwan's independence. That is another message. So one by one, gradually, we are changing the statement to make pressure to China. If the China invade Taiwan or blockade Taiwan, we will reply. That is a message.
Yes.
So, but gradually, not too strong. Too strong is to push too much is not a good situation. But gradually, we are stepping up to support Taiwan, and that is a political message to China to not invade Taiwan.
Dr. Satoru Nagao, one final question. How are ordinary Taiwanese citizens responding to these heightened security concerns? And how do you think they're going to be reacting to this rhetoric and this constantly escalating thing going on there?
Yes, in this case, there is a gap of perception between China and Taiwan, I believe. Chinese government believes that making pressure will create something good situation for China, which is Taiwanese people accept peaceful unification with China's mainland. But reality is completely opposite. Because China gathers Air Force or Navy around Taiwan and try to show the blockade to Taiwan. That kind of situation, the Taiwanese people strongly resist, and their patriotic mind is rising, and they try to resist it. So that's why the current leader of Taiwan won the election, even if he strongly supports independence of Taiwan in the past. So because of this, China escalates their activities, and the Taiwanese people gather and create a strong mind against China. That is happening in this region. So that's why what happened is something like that. And Japan and the US and cooperate with the Philippines. We are preparing to support Taiwan. So that's why China's dream to invade Taiwan is not easy to achieve, I believe. But before the 2027, which Xi Jinping need to achieve something special to continue as a leader of China, they are preparing. The rising tension in this region is true, and indeed, the situation is not favorable for China now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru Nagao, for joining us on that discussion. We move now to more updates. In recent developments concerning the Ukraine conflict, Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed conditional agreement to a US proposed 30-day ceasefire. During a press conference in Moscow on March the 13th, Putin stated, "We agree with the proposal to stop the fighting, but we proceed from the fact that this cessation should lead to long-term peace and eliminate the root causes of the crisis." Here's what the world leaders had to say.
Как будут решаться вопросы контроля, верификации? Как мы можем и как нам будет гарантировано, что ничего подобного происходить не будет? Контроль как будет организован? Надеюсь, что на уровне здравого смысла это всем понятно. Это все серйозний вопрос.
Зараз ми всі почули з Росії дуже передбачувані, дуже маніпулятивні слова Путіна у відповідь на ідею тиші на фронті. Він фактично готує відмову станом на зараз. Путін, звісно, боїться сказати прямо президенту Трампу, що хоче продовжувати цю війну. Хоче вбивати українців. І тому вони там в Москві обставляють ідею тиші такими передумовами, щоб взагалі нічого не вийшло. Або щоб не виходило якнайду.
Statement, but it wasn't complete. And yeah, I'd love to meet with him or talk to him, but we have to get it over with fast. You know, every day people are being killed.
我们希望各方能够通过对话谈判，达成一个公平、持久、有约束力，并被各当事方所接受的和平协议。中方愿意同国际社会一道，为最终化解危机、实现持久和平，继续发挥建设。
In diplomatic developments, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirmed that President Putin met with US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow. The meeting aimed to facilitate direct talks between Putin and Trump regarding the ceasefire proposal. Peskov expressed cautious optimism, stating that there are reasons to be cautiously optimistic. We are joined by two guests for this discussion. Dr. Sergei Dvoryanov, President of IDC Russia and Director of WHD International Board. We are also joined by Julia Kaz-Bordina, Senior Fellow, Ukrainian Prism, located in Kiev. Dr. Dvoryanov, I thank you very much for joining us, both of you. Dr. Dvoryanov, I wanted to come to you first on this one. Russia has described its stance as cautious optimism. Can you elaborate what that means?
Thank you so much. Good evening. I wish all the best during the Holi, because India today celebrate Holi. I'm in the most auspicious place in the world. Shivering down Kham is a famous place. I especially came here to pray for peace for future generations. As you know, right now we're in the middle of the holy month of Ramadan.
Okay.
Which celebrate all Muslim nations. And also, very soon, we're expecting Orthodox Easter also.
Dr.
Yes,
Dvoryanov, would we be able to get back to the question kindly? What does Putin mean by cautious? What's the Russian stance by cautious optimism mean in regard to this 30-day ceasefire deal? Sorry, I believe we've had some technical issues there. Julia, can you please, President Zelensky has labelled President Putin's response as manipulative and called for stricter sanctions. Can you explain why Kiev believes increased economic pressure is essential to securing a genuine ceasefire agreement?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and I think it's it's pretty understandable why Kiev considers economic pressure essential, because the response from the President Putin clearly indicates that he does not want to have a ceasefire. When somebody says yes, but in diplomatic language that means no, because what we're talking about is Russia stopping killing Ukrainians, and only yesterday we had a school destroyed in Sumy Oblast. It was hit with a ballistic missile. We had a hospital destroyed in Kharkiv Oblast, and we have every day we have civilians in Kherson who are killed by bombs dropped off Russian drones. And so the only thing that is required from Russia at this point is to stop doing that. And Putin says, oh no, I will not stop doing that unless you do X, Y, and Z. And so this indicates clearly that Putin does not want to stop the aggression. And for this simple reason, additional pressure needs to be applied for President Putin to act reasonably and to actually stop his aggression.
Dr. Dvoryanov, just checking. Sorry, I would like to come back to you, Julia. Thank you for joining us. So essentially, do you see these Russian demands, including no admission to NATO, including conceding these territories, including no European troops in Ukraine? Do you see this as, in a way, Ukraine conceding the war against Russia?
Well, these demands are a way to make Ukraine defenseless against the next Russian assault. Given all the statements that came from the Russian side that Ukraine is not a nation, that Ukrainians do not exist, and given all the policies that Russia has pursued in the occupied territories of Ukraine, exterminating basically Ukrainian identity, stealing Ukrainian people, Ukrainian children, giving them to Russian families, and all these things, trying to completely eradicate Ukrainian identity. All these demands that actually make Ukraine incapable of defeating itself in case of a repeat Russian aggression, those are a ploy that Russia would like to use. They failed to achieve their goals militarily because they are not as strong as they would like to appear. Now they want to achieve the same goals using negotiations and hoping that it's more important for President Trump to make a deal with Russia than to actually preserve Ukrainian independence.
Dr. Sergei Dvoryanov, we have obviously seen continued drone attacks on Ukraine from Russia. Is this really showing a will for peace?
Good evening, and thank you for question. Thank you for invitation and possibility to speak, especially in this auspicious day or holiday. And I'm right now in Vrindavan Dham, is famous and a very auspicious place in Bharat civilization. I especially came pray for peace, and of course I can feel the pain and misery of my colleague from London, from Ukraine. Of course, it's also.
I believe we have had some technical issues there once again, unfortunately. Julia, I'm going to come back to you. With both sides reporting new drone strikes, how do these military incidents affect Ukraine's trust in this negotiation process? And can talks realistically continue amid ongoing hostilities?
I mean, Ukraine is open to talks, and that has been something that we've been saying from the very beginning. But talks mean that we need to stop fighting first. I mean, you cannot really talk to somebody when they're trying to kill you. So,
Yes. Julia, I just wanted to ask, how do the people in Ukraine, how are they feeling about Donald Trump right now? You've obviously kind of seen these positive recent talks with the US where they came out with this 30-day ceasefire deal. But then the week before it was public arguments with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. What's the general feeling in Ukraine over the current US administration?
Well, the mood in Ukraine tends to fluctuate, of course, when this significant pressure was exerted on the Ukrainian president, and when it was so public and so open, and we have seen the US administration bully the Ukrainian president openly, and we have heard President Trump say things that were factually incorrect, which when he claimed that President Zelensky is a dictator without elections and that he has only 4% of support, which is not true. And so at that time, of course, the public mood rallied around President Zelensky, and there was very much people were disappointed in what President Trump was doing, because when he was just elected and when he talked about ending the war in Ukraine, many people were actually hopeful that he would be able to achieve what he called peace through strength, meaning that we hope that President Trump would apply pressure on the Russian Federation, on the actual aggressor in this war. And so when pressure was applied to President Zelensky, this was something that was very hard to understand for Ukrainian public generally. And of course, the attitude towards the U.S. administration was not, it actually deteriorated. But now that it seems like the misunderstanding is behind us, things seem to calm down. But still there are questions asked. When we hear comments from the U.S. administration saying that Ukraine will have to make territorial concessions, over 50%, this is a recent poll that just came out, that 50% of Ukrainians believe that no territorial concessions should be made under any circumstances. And so I think this tension is going to remain. And the question is going to remain what concessions Russia is expected to make if the US side says that both sides have to make concessions.
Thank you very much, Julia Kazbondina and Dr. Dvoryanov, for joining us in that discussion. We now move to some more news updates. A British national has died in a hit and run involving a vehicle from Kenyan President William Ruto's motorcade. The victim, identified as 79-year-old Edgar Charles Frederick, was struck on a main road in Nairobi and died on Thursday. Police detained the driver of the support vehicle involved, but he has since been released on bail. Kenyan authorities are continuing their investigation. And that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.